Welcome back. In this video we're going to continue working on our procedural wood material. Now you remember back when we did ring width, we created this noise texture and we used this length to get these different values. And because we were plugged into a 1D texture instead of a 3D texture, our length value basically gave us different shades with different values the further we got out from the center, and that was based on this noise texture. So if we had a higher scale, we'd get different rings. If we have a lower scale, we would get these much wider rings. And we used this to change the width of our rings, so we had a little bit of variation in the width of these. Now, the easiest way to do this next part is essentially to use this same exact setup. So essentially we're just going to take everything in here, just going to use Shift-Control-D and move it over here. And this is going to be our color variation. Now at the moment, if we look at this add, you can see we're getting something kind of interesting in there, not super interesting. We'll take this scale. We're going to change this from 1D to 3D. Have a look at that add result. We need to make sure our value is plugged in. We'll just plug that into vector. Have a look at our noise texture, have a look at our multiply. Now, actually we don't need to add for this. We just need this multiply node. And then we can have a look at this result. We can increase our scale. We can increase our detail and our roughness and get a different effect. And now we have a few different color variations. We can grab a mix node, grab a multiply node, and just plug this in here. And now we have a little bit of variation as far as the color goes. We actually want this in slot B and multiply in there. And now we can get a little bit of variation in our color. So you can see we've got some more grays coming in there. And that just gives you a little bit more variation. We can tweak our scales and things like that just to get a little bit more interest in there. We can increase our detail. We can increase our roughness if we want. Even increase the distortion a little bit to get different results. And this is like the easy way of doing this process, just by copying this noise texture across and doing it that way. We're going to create a slightly different way of doing this, and the reason for that is if we look at this noise texture at the moment, this noise texture is just as uniform as the individual rings were. You can see they're all the same width. Again, if we want, we could take a noise texture and mix this in. So we'll just actually duplicate this mix color node, move that over here, mix this in here, use linear light, take this value, take it way down, and maybe just add in a little bit of variation like this. Maybe tweak this scale a little bit. And we get like quite a nice, interesting result there. A little bit of nice variation. And that just gives us some more interest in our material. So the added variance to the color there looks pretty nice. There's just one other thing that I want to do, and that's just add in a converter color ramp. Plug this in here. And now if we want, we can take some of these values and we can really squeeze them down a little bit to get even more variation in our material. So if you want something with a little bit more contrast, we can bring that in. And then if you find you're getting too much contrast, you can always take your factor down a little bit and even tweak things like the blend mode, maybe change it to something like darken or color burn. You have to watch your factors on some of these settings because you will get some pretty strong results on some of them. For the moment, I'll keep that on multiply and put it up pretty high to about 0.75. Finally, I'm just going to make sure I rename this. At the moment it's ring width, so we just hit F2 and change this to, and I'll just change this to color variance. Okay, it's challenge time. Your challenge in this video is to tidy up your node tree and then experiment with some different blend modes in that color mix node and dial in your color ramp for the best results. Now with anything artistic, the best results generally are subjective, so play around with it until you get an effect that you really like and then stick with it. Join me in the next video and we're going to start adding some micro details to our wood texture. I'll see you then.